Although I think Amadeus is a great movie, I could never figure out why this scene occurs.
Signore, we have something special for you. Something you're going to love. Mmm. Is that good? Signore, believe me, this is the most delicious thing I ever ate in my life.
Yuck, that's gross. But let me tell you why I think this is in the movie in a film essay, a short one about Amadeus and the delights of sweets and the delights of music coming up next.
Really, Signore, you don't know what you missed.
So after seeing this movie several times over the years, I have always been sort of grossed out by these servants at the beginning of the movie coming to the door of what turns out to be the main character, Salieri, and they end up eating a confectionery delight and sort of all over his face. And the question is, for me, is why is that in the movie at all? Why does the director have the actor smash it into his face and we can see it sort of all over his face? Was that really necessary? When I began to think about this question, then I realized, oh my goodness, this kind of thing pops up all over the movie. The association of confectionery delights in the movie, sweet treats, let's say, with the question of music and who can make great music, which obviously is one of the themes of the movie. So let's investigate what is going on in this movie with sweet treats, as shown in the opening scene, and how it affects our vision of this movie. One thing that happens in the movie is that Salieri, who has a very high post in the court, has access to wealth. In fact, he's a wealthy person. In contrast, Mozart and his wife are always poor and in debt. In the movie, one of the early scenes in Salieri sneaks in to a banquet room in order to steal some of the treats at the table in the banquet room, which is empty. Eventually it will get eaten, but he's going to have the first attempt at finding the treat that he likes. When he's in that room sneaking a treat, as you might do with the refrigerator at 2 a.m. in your family's home, in comes Mozart and his girlfriend, soon-to-be wife, Constance. And they start playing under the table. Salieri backs off and he observes them, and that's in that scene he realizes this man in front of me, this sort of loser, this ape, this ridiculous man is Mozart, the writer of the world's greatest music.
People fart backwards.
Oh, ha ha.
Now, why is that scene in the banquet room? I think it's linked to the opening scene with the servant stuffing the treat in his mouth. The banquet room is a place of delight, of great joy, of great tastes, obviously. And then Mozart walks in, and he is the one who gives music to everybody in all kinds of circumstances, and he gives Salieri the greatest delight of his life.
That was Mozart. That giggling, dirty-minded creature I'd just seen, crawling on the floor.
Salieri will always be wanting to listen to Mozart's music throughout the rest of the movie, and he wants to, dare I say, consume Mozart's music. He goes to all the operas where Mozart's music is debuting, and he wants to delight. His narration of his delight in Mozart's music really is unparalleled, I think, in movie history.
A single note hanging there, unwavering. Until a clarinet took it over. Sweetened it into a phrase of such delight.
In other words, just as those sweet treats give Salieri, the great feeling of eating a sweet, so does Mozart's music. It's like a sweet treat, but the greatest sweet treat of all, especially to the ears, and Salieri knows it because, of course, he's a composer. And then this early scene, you have the contrast between Mozart being a ridiculous man, Mozart being the one who gives treats, and that's the revelation scene where Salieri realizes once he's eaten so-called the apple, maybe, like in Genesis 3, or the Great Delight, he is in a new realm, a new world, where he's got to figure out who this Mozart guy is and how in the world can he make great music. Now, I think there's a contrast that shows up in the movie. Then Salieri uses sweet treats, and remember, he's a composer of sweet music himself. He uses sweet treats to seduce people and lord his power over them. In one scene, he gives Mozart a treat, and Mozart is begging him for help at this point. It is a sweet treat that I think in the 18th century is supposed to be a luxury good, a status symbol, probably worth some money because, hey, the sugar and the sweet industries aren't in full blossom like they are today, where you can pick up a package of M&Ms for $1 or something like that. And in one scene when Mozart's wife walks in, Salieri offers her, quote-unquote, the nipples of Venus.
Let me offer you some refreshments. Do you know what these are? Capezzoli di Venere, nipples of Venus.
This scene, too, is Salieri trying to seduce with a sweet treat, a delight. The analogy here is to music. Maybe music is the way to gain power over other people. Maybe it's a way to impress them and to get them in your favor. Music, or the art form, is a tool for Salieri to retain his position at court, to use it to sort of lord it over the other composers, up-and-coming ones like Mozart, let's say. It's also a way for him to gain acclaim, so if his music is great enough, a la sweet enough, people will consume it, eat it, and delight in it. The contrast is to Mozart, who does make music that delights people, but I think it's a different kind of delight. It's a joyous, sort of aesthetic burst of amazingness that can't be found anywhere else. It's rarer than the sweet treats that Salieri can offer. And so we see Salieri use candy and sweets in order to sort of seduce people and to placate them. Mozart uses his sweet treats, a la his music, to, delight everybody and to give them a better life, make them better visionaries, enjoy their lives more. For Mozart, and he may be naive, it's not about power, it's not about power relationships. And maybe that's what Salieri in part is jealous of. Certainly Salieri is jealous that Mozart's treats are far superior to the ones that Salieri makes and hands out to his audience. Thus, I think at the end, there's something very interesting then with consumption. In fact, Salieri gets Mozart to write his own Mass. Do you know what happens in the Latin Mass? Consumption, actually communion, where people, who are Roman Catholics in this case, ingest Christ into them, taking the bread and the wine. Communion in Christianity is, in a weird way, and I don't mean this to be gross, but a cannibalistic feast where you eat the body of Christ and drink his blood. One idea theologically here is that everybody who is a sinner, everyone who's nasty, certainly like Salieri, envious, jealous, angry, and so on, they want to consume other people. They want to literally take them in and eat them, or that happens metaphorically. They want to, for Salieri, in terms of his envy, destroy somebody else, let's consume Mozart. And basically Mozart is eaten up by the end, metaphorically, by Salieri. He ends up dying, of course, at Salieri's hand because Salieri forces him to write. The idea is that consumption can go two ways, just as with the sweet treats of Salieri and Mozart. Consumption can go towards restoration and maybe resurrection and salvation, a la communion, a feast to commemorate Christ's sacrifice, and later, 3 days later, the resurrection. But there is a kind of consumption that's nasty and cannibalistic, which annihilates, and I think Salieri engages in that sort of consumption. Even though he's writing the Latin Mass with Mozart, he is trying to annihilate or destroy his rival, whose treats are far better, and so now his treats will be the best ever if he can get rid of Mozart, although he wants to eat Mozart in a way in order for himself to have Mozart in him and thus produce the kind of sweet treats that Mozart makes himself. So what's happening in the opening scene then when the servants are putting food in their mouths? Inside the chamber door, Salieri is going to take his own life. He's going to, in the metaphor, consume himself. In fact, he tries to slit his own throat, which is the way he can consume food, and which is a metaphor in a weird way for the music and consuming music. No longer does he want to hear and be tortured by Mozart's music being better than his. His has been forgotten, obviously. So now he wants to off himself so he doesn't have to live in that world where Mozart's traits or delights give joy to people, and Salieri is left with all that he did, his destruction, and being forgotten with no legacy. In the very end, there's something very neat. The aide comes in and says, "Hey, Salieri, there's some very sweet treats for you."
And then we have your favorite breakfast for you. Sugar rolls. You love those. Fresh sugar rolls.
And the joke, the satire is on Salieri has become, quote-unquote, a priest of mediocrity. Calling himself a priest, the priest gives out the communion wafers, the bread and the wine, and here he is dispensing to the insane his own twisted or gross bread and wine, as it were. Thus, I think there's a kind of consumption of music, aesthetic delights, which is restorative. You listen to music to be restored or to feel better or to have a better life, or you can listen to music to destroy. The same thing for composers. They compose in order to get revenge or to become the best for prideful or selfish reasons, let's say. Maybe that's the case with Salieri, but other composers seem to have what Mozart in this movie has, the gift of God, which gives infinite blessings. It's always generating good things for people. And so that's the music of Mozart, which when we consume it, we become perhaps whole and restored.